To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
So Matterhorn Bobsleds were an idea for an attraction that Walt Disney had since the very beginning of Mickey Mouse Park. The idea stemmed from the gravity-controlled canal boats attraction similar to Splash Mountain and obviously the Matterhorn Bobsleds. But that is just the very beginning of the history of the Matterhorn Bobsleds, so join me today as we talk about the legend, mysteries and secrets of the Matterhorn Bobsleds at Disneyland. During the construction of the park, the dirt that was excavated from the Sleeping Beauty's castle moat was put in a very special area in between Fantasyland and Tomorrowland. This massive pile of dirt was planted over, benches and tables were added, and the area became what was known back then as Holiday Hill. Over the years, Holiday Hill became Lookout Mountain, a very popular destination for teenagers to go and, kiss. Gross. It was at this time that Walt Disney conceived the idea for a toboggan ride on the mountain with real snow, but the logistics caused the vehement objections of Disneyland construction chief Joe Fowler. A brand new style of roller coaster was emerging at the time called a Wild Mouse coaster, and this got the attention of Disneyland executives who began to consider applying this emerging technology to the creation of a toboggan-themed roller coaster. When you think Wild Mouse, just think Goofy's Sky School in DCA, because that is pretty similar to what a Wild Mouse coaster was. In fact, that's exactly the type of roller coaster that it is. It's a Wild Mouse coaster. Just like Primeval Whirl at Animal Kingdom. Why am I whispering? Oh, and did you know the name Primeval Whirl is a reference to another Disneyland attraction, the Disneyland Railroad to Primeval World? Okay, I'm getting a little sidetracked. Anyways, the Matterhorn. Eventually, they built the wonderful, magical Skyway, and this Skyway was so magical that it went right through the middle of Holiday Hill. Not only would this new attraction be a wonderful retheming of Holiday Hill, but it would also cover up that horribly ugly Skyway pylon that was standing right on top of the hill. While WED were trying to decide what kind of mountain they wanted for this brand new ride, Walt Disney was in Switzerland filming The Third Man on the Mountain. In a moment of pure inspiration, impressed by the beauty of the real Matterhorn, Walt Disney grabbed a postcard of the mountain from a souvenir stand and sent it back to Imagineer Vic Green with the message, "Vic, build this. Walt." This resulted in the merger of two ideas, the gravity flume ride from Mickey Mouse Park and this roller coaster that they've been batting around for a while now. In order to make room for this roller coaster though, another classic Disneyland attraction would have to go, and this time it was the Junior Autopia. Or the Midget Autopia. But Disney wouldn't stop here. They partnered with Aero Development to make the Matterhorn Bobsleds the world's first tubular steel roller coaster. So that's pretty impressive. Even though that breakthrough technology hasn't really held up today because every time I ride the Matterhorn Mountain, my spine breaks. The Matterhorn Bobsleds opened on June 14th, 1959, and as you could have guessed, the ride was a massive success. When the attraction first opened, the Matterhorn was considered part of Fantasyland, but that has changed throughout the years. With the Finding Nemo submarines and the Autopia taking up more and more room, the Matterhorn is considered part of both Fantasyland and Tomorrowland. In fact, you can get in line from either the Fantasyland side or the Tomorrowland side. Some people say the Tomorrowland side is faster or that the Fantasyland side jerks you around some more, but these claims are mostly unfounded and for the most part, both ride experiences are the exact same. And that is because, for those of you who do not know, you board at the exact same area no matter what line you get in, so yeah, it's the same. And a fun fact for those of you who didn't know, there used to be hand grips on the outside of the bobsled cars, but because they didn't want guests, smashing their fingers, they removed them from the outside and put them inside, so guests' hands are more or less safe now. The splashdown pools at the end of the attraction also serve two purposes. One, to cool down the braking pads, and two, to act as a brake themselves. Because the bobsleds are constantly exposed to water though, every single day going around and around into the water and out of the water, they are constantly waxed all the time to keep them from looking disgusting. Another little known fact, the track for Space Mountain at the Magic Kingdom in Florida is actually roughly based on the track for the Matterhorn in Anaheim. Even though the tracks aren't exactly the same, they are pretty close, and Space Mountain at Walt Disney World was intended to be sort of an East Coast Matterhorn. Now this is sort of an open secret at Disneyland that a lot of people know exists. For many years, a basketball half court existed inside the structure above the coaster near the top of the mountain. The mountain climbers would play here in between climbs and during their breaks, just to remove a little bit of that stress of climbing up that massive mountain. Because internal access to the mountain was locked for safety reasons, the court was only accessible to the climbers. Now I don't know about you, but if I was a cast member working the Matterhorn and it was my break time, of course I would want to go shoot some hoops. Are you kidding me? But it's blocked off. kind of. The court was relocated slightly during the installation of the Tinkerbell flight equipment prior to the 50th anniversary celebration. The hoop and playing area, though, remain intact to this day. There is a cast member break room inside the mountain at the base. The court is said to still be there today by many cast members and the mountain's climbers. Now, I'm no cast member, but if it was my break and there's a half court of basketball above me, you can bet your bottom dollar I'd be up there shooting hoops. The ride was recently updated in 2015 with a more fluid Yeti animatronic and new effects at the lift hill at the very beginning of the attraction. But just because we're talking about the present now doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about the past. Now, I know we briefly discussed the origins of the Matterhorn and the history of it, but let's talk about something very specific in the past, the Skyway. Now, for this part, I'm going to be referencing the very first video I ever made. Disneyland abandoned the Skyway. It sort of was gonna be a series that I was gonna make, but it never really panned out. I just kinda lost interest. But this pertains to the Matterhorn and is very important information, so listen up. On April 17th, 1994, a 30-year-old man fell from the Skyway gondola inside the Matterhorn right onto the Alice in Wonderland attraction. Luckily, he was not hurt, but he did demand $25,000 from Disney for compensation, obviously. Later on, before the trial, of course, the man came forward and confessed that he had in fact jumped from the Skyway and dropped the case thereafter. So the lesson here today would be do not jump off of attractions and try to sue Disney, because you'll lose. The Skyway closed in 1994, with the reason of its closure being metal fatigue, not to be confused with mental fatigue, which I suffer from chronically. It is at this point where I lend the stage to my past self, who is way better at drawing than I am currently, so Dallin from the past, it's all you. Thanks, Dallin from the future. You see, subscribers from the future, the internal support structure for the Skyway inside the Matterhorn had become cracked, damaged, and old, and the only way to get in to fix it would be to tear open the side of the Matterhorn. And that would cost Disney way too much money. So, instead of tearing down the Matterhorn, they went with the cheaper route and tore down the Skyway instead. They then moved the operating budget from the Skyway to a brand new attraction that would be opening later called Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Forbidden Eye. The Tomorrowland loading zone was demolished completely, but a stairway to nowhere remains today that guests can look at to the far right of the Carousel Theater.
Me from the past, it's the far left of the Carousel Theater.
To the far left of the Carousel Theater. Alright, and that is quite enough out of you. Everybody give me from the past a nice round of applause. Thank you for trying your best, even though it is never enough. Anyways, on to more facts about the Matterhorn. The story to this attraction is not obvious, because there is almost nothing in the way of a pre-show or queue story. You know, story in the queue of the line. The only piece of story you can find before actually boarding the attraction is the plaster cast of the Yeti footprint, which lies outside of the attraction. Beneath the cast of the footprint is a plaque which reads Cast of Footprint, discovered by the Matterhorn Expedition, South Slope, May 27th, 1978. Now, May 27th, 1978 may sound familiar because that is the day the Matterhorn reopened with major modifications. One of those modifications was the addition of the Yeti Herald, which obviously ties into the story of the plaster cast outside of the mountain. You are on a different Matterhorn expedition. You are leading the charge to find the Lost Wells expedition, which, I mean, you do end up finding the expedition, but it's a little bit worse for the wear. And of course, since your expedition first set foot on the mountain, you have been chased around by the Yeti, and he is chasing you off of the mountain now, which, I mean, at least you do it and you survive, you make it off the mountain. Same can't be said for those poor Wells expedition members. Such a shame. And of course, now that we've discussed the story and we've also discussed the attraction's track counterpart over in Walt Disney World, let's talk about the attraction's theming counterpart over in Walt Disney World. Of course, I speak of Expedition Everest, an attraction at Disney's Animal Kingdom which features a snowy mountaintop, a lost expedition, and of course, a Yeti. Although this one prefers disco to scaring people off of its mountain. The Matterhorn Bobsleds represents a very important transition in the history of Disneyland. Walt Disney, who was not a massive fan of thrill rides in his park since the very beginning of Disneyland, finally caved and allowed the Matterhorn in his park to attract more visitors. The Matterhorn was arguably one of the first e-ticket attractions ever built at Disneyland, minus of course the submarine voyage. And even though it may whip me around and throw my hip out of place and break my spine when I ride it, I absolutely love the Matterhorn Bobsleds. Hello everybody, thank you so much for watching this video. I'm very interested to know, what is your favorite attraction at Disneyland in either Tomorrowland, Fantasyland, or both? Make sure to let me know down in those comments. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitter. I have recently broken 1,000 followers, so thank you all very much for that. Make sure to donate on Patreon for access to very early exclusive audio clips from each episode, as well as access to giveaways, so that will be fun. And it looks like the Halloween special was pretty well received, so I might be doing more of those longer episodes in the future. We'll see what happens. I need to find something I can talk upwards of 45 minutes to an hour about, but we'll see what I can do. Anyways, guys, thank you all so very much for watching. I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye.